Alright, we're going to do this time travel gimmick one more time, but before we go ahead any further, the Shatt is a waterway that flows right between Iraq and Iran, and these two rivals slash frenemies have been fighting over the Shatt since the 1930s. Now in 1970, this was the climax of the Shatt conflict, or border skirmishes, or the crisis, whatever you would like to call it, basically culminated in the 1975 Algiers Agreement. Now, what is really interesting about the Shatt conflict or crisis or whatever you like to call it from 1974 to 1975 is probably the last time the Middle East would see peace and reconciliation between diplomatic means. Now, of course, we know after 1979, diplomatic means are only to an end to stop the war if you're losing or if there's a stalemate. But this is actually pretty interesting, and we'll see like the last dynasty of the Middle East also go down in flames, but this was just like a snapshot in time of while the Pahlavi lived, and well, this was how the Pahlavi operated. So join me today as we go back to 1975 and see what the Shatt was all about. But actually, we have to go even further back to the 1910s when the British were the dominant preemptive power in the region. So it went from Britain to Iran still, but kind of on the back heel to this day, and really shows the progression of Iran and how strong they still are as a regional power in the Middle East or Central Asia, even the Caucasus, if you will. So, with that being said, I will take you on the journey, ladies, gentlemen, NNB, to the Middle East, well, more than likely the Iraqi-Iranian border, and see what was, what is to be, and the future of Iran and Iraq relations in a snapshot. 1974 to 1975. Enjoy. Iran had reputed the demarcation line established in the Persian Gulf of the Anglo-Ottoman Convention of 1913, arguing that the Iraq-Iran border of the Shatt should be demarcated along the Talweg principle. The Kingdom of Iraq, encouraged by Britain, took Iran to the League of Nations in 1934, where they did nothing. But the dispute was not resolved, of course. In 1937, Iran and Iraq signed their first official boundary treaty. The treaty established a waterway border on the eastern bank of the river, except for a 4-mile-long anchorage zone along the Abadan and near the Abadan, which was allotted to Iran and where the border ran along the Talweg. In 1958, the royal monarchy of Iraq was overthrown by coup d'etat led by Iraqi leftists and then nationalists in a coup d'etat again. 10 years later, in 1968, Arab Socialist Ba'athist Party took power after leading the coup d'etat, which established and re-established the Ba'athist regime in Iraq. Yes, they were overthrown and then re-overthrown the overthrowers. That is pretty much a Tuesday in the Middle East. Shortly afterwards, Iran sent a delegation of diplomats to Iraq in 1969. Nice. And when the Iraqi government refused to process the negotiations over a new treaty, Iran withdrew from the Treaty of 1937. The Iranian abrogation of the 1937 treaty marked the beginning of a period of acute hostilities of the Iraqi-Iranian tensions that would last until the Algiers Agreement and Accords of 1975. It's a marvelous event in the Middle East. From March 1974 to March 1975, Iran and Iraq fought border skirmishes over Iran's support for the Iraqi Kurds, who were engaged in an insurgency against the Arab Iraqi state for secession and the establishment of a Kurdish state. In 1975, the Iraqis launched a major military offensive into Iran, spearheaded with a tank column of tanks landed from the Eastern Bloc. This incursion was defeated by the Iranians. Several other attacks took place, however. Iran, which had the world's 5th largest, most powerful military at the time, and was friends with the most powerful military person of the West, the United States, basically and easily defeated the Iraqis with their air power and tank power, while continuing to frustrate the Iraqis at home with the arming of the Kurdish separatists, with the help of its close allies, the United States and Israel. Some 1,000 people died in the course of 1974 to 1975 in the clashes in the Shatt Arab region, and Iraq was unable to make any progress against Iran. Consequently, Iraq decided against continuing the conflict, choosing instead to make concessions to Tehran to end the Kurdish rebellion as well. In the 1975 Algiers Agreement, Iraq made territorial concessions, including the Shatt Arab waterway, in exchange for normalizing relations and stopping arming the Kurds, please. Which, the Iranians had Kurds of their own, so we like to shoot ourselves in the foot. In return for Iraq's recognition of the new frontier, or the frontier of 1937, on the waterway which ran along the entire Talweg as per Iran's agreement, the latter ended its support for the Iraqi Kurdish guerrillas in the north. The aftermath and the War of 1980. In March 1975, Iraq signed the Algiers Accords, in which it recognized a series of straight lines closely approximating the Talweg, the deepest channel of the Shatt Arab waterway, as their official border, in exchange for which Iran ended its support for the Iraqi Kurd separatists. 5 years later, on the 17th of September 1980, Iraq abrogated the Algiers Agreement after Iran shelled a number of border posts on the 4th of September, following the 1979 Iranian Revolution, which overthrew the Shah of Iran and established an Islamic theocracy, which is the status quo today, except for Saddam Hussein's Iraq. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein claimed that the newly established Islamic Republic of Iran had refused to abide by the stipulations of the Algiers Agreement, and therefore, Iraq considered them null and void. Tensions began to run high between the two states as Iraq's ruling Ba'athist Party feared that the Ayatollah Rahul Khomeini was attempting to export the Iranian Revolution to Iraq by inciting its Shia majority population into revolting against the secular Sunni government, or secular government as a whole. 5 days later, the Iraqi military launched a major offensive and invaded Iran, sparking the Iraq-Iranian War, which began on the 22nd of September 1980. Sharif don't like it. Rock the cat bash, rocking the cash bar. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope it was fun. I hope it was not too boring. And I hope to see you again. Ladies, gentlemen, NB. Till next time, it's been a pleasure. It's been a blast. And I actually finished this faster when I'm talking slower than when I was talking slow, but not the slow as in, I was talking like a rush, stiff slow, but not a relaxed emotion, talking nice and slow. I don't know, I'm just making up words. I'm kind of half asleep, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope it was a pleasure. I hope it was a blast. Ladies, gentlemen, NB, the Sharif don't like it. Rockin' Iran, rockin' the Iran, don't like it. Rockin' the Iraq, rockin' the Iraq. Anyway, terrible singing. Yes, I was inspired to do something on the Middle East by Rock in the Kashbash. Yes, that is how most of life goes. You just get inspired to do something, and you do it, and why not? Anyway, please do not copyright me, Warner's Brothers. I'm not the lead singer of The Clash. Spencer, some S last name, but yeah, the lead singer. I do not sound anything like him. I'm not British, eh? Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something, and I hope you cringe at the singing. Remember, split your country properly if you run along a river. And don't ask the League of Nations to do anything for you. That's just going to end terribly for you. Next time I'll see you, we'll probably be in the cash bar. Or a cash bar. I learned something. بلا اصلا